On Network Africa. Talks to end 6 years of fighting in South Sudan conclude with no deal between the warring parties. It's the final day of public viewing of the body of Kenya's former president, Daniel Arap Moi. Plus, South Africa's second opposition party, the Economic Freedom Fighters, threatened to disrupt this year's State of the Nation address. And a warm welcome to the program. I'm Tenyola Shobowale. From African leaders gathering over the weekend for the annual AU summit in Addis Ababa to Kenyans paying their last respect to former President Daniel Arap Moi, we begin the program with stories and happenings that made headlines over the weekend.
African Union leaders met in Addis Ababa, the capital city of Ethiopia, on Sunday for the annual meeting to seek to end violence in the continent and advance the construction of African Continental Free Trade Area. The 33rd Ordinary Session of the Assembly of Heads of State and Government of the AU was held under the theme of silencing the guns, creating conducive conditions for Africa's development. At the inaugural session, Musa Faki Mahamat, chairman of the African Union Commission, said the summit aims to end wars, civil conflicts and gender-based violence in Africa so as to achieve peace and thus promote better development in Africa.
We should find various solutions to tackle the trigger and root causes of conflicts by political, military and diplomatic means to silence the weapons. We hope that based on the principle of African solutions to African problems, we can keep away from external interference, from rival and perilous agendas for Africa.
Silencing the guns is a commitment to achieving the aspirations of Africa's Agenda 2063, specifically Aspiration 4, which envisions a peaceful and secure Africa, thereby making peace a reality for African people. On Saturday, President Uhuru Kenyatta led Kenyans in paying respects to former President Daniel Arap Moi, who died last week at the age of 95. Kenyatta spoke as Moi's body was taken to Parliament in Nairobi, calling him a truly extraordinary man, as scores of people filed past the body to pay their respects.
The sun has set on a truly extraordinary man, a masterful yet thoughtful leader, a suave yet firm diplomat, one who served the nation with dignity and honor, one whose wisdom and diplomatic finesse kept Kenya both relevant and neutral, even as the whole world was in the grips of the Cold War.
Moi's body will lie in state for 3 days before a public funeral service is held on Tuesday, before a burial in his hometown on Wednesday. Moi came to power in 1978 when he was serving as vice president and the nation's first leader, President Jomo Kenyatta, died. He remained in power until the end of 2002 when his constitutional term ran out. Moi held power for 24 years, longer than any other leader since independence, and left a legacy of corruption that still haunts the East African nation today. France's army said French soldiers killed more than 30 Islamist militants in Mali in 3 operations on Thursday, February 6th and Friday, February 7th, targeting Al-Qaeda and Islamic State-linked groups. In Goma region, soldiers of the French force killed about 20 militants and destroyed several vehicles, while in the Liptako region, a stronghold of Islamic State, 10 more were killed. France has said it planned to deploy 600 more soldiers in the fight against militants in the Sahel, an arid region of West Africa, south of the Sahara Desert. The reinforcements will mostly be sent to the area between Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger.
To our main stories now, South Sudan's neighbors say they do not support another extension of talks between the country's warring parties as the February 22nd deadline for the formation of a unity government looms. Crunch talks to try and stop 6 years of hostilities ended with no deal between both parties. President Salva Kiir and his rival, Riek Machar, have been in closed-door meetings over the last 2 days in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa, to reach a deal before the expiry of the 100 days extension they sought to form a transitional government. But the latest round of talks have ended with both sides failing to agree. Their key difference is the number of states to be maintained in the country. The government wants to keep 32 devolved states, while the rebels want a return to the much narrower system of governance involving 10 states. While the African Union and international partners have threatened tough actions against anyone obstructing the peace process in the country. Meanwhile, South Sudan's government and different armed groups in the country have taken a historic step in signing a comprehensive action plan to end and prevent all grave violations against children. The action plan, which is expected to be a model for many countries if followed by letter and spirit, will see South Sudan delisted from the annexes of the Secretary General's annual report on children and armed conflict. Speaking at a ceremony which also saw the inauguration of a building in which different armed groups will work on implementing the action plan, the country's Deputy Minister for Defense called for continued support towards its implementation.
We are doing this voluntarily, not without any resources, but it's our prerequisite and commitment to do it because these are our children. Nobody is forcing us because we believe protecting our children and all the human rights is our moral imperative.
The more children that are allowed an opportunity to grow up in peace, that are allowed an opportunity to think creatively, that are not beaten up because they think differently, these children will produce ideas that can't save the world.
Without children, there is no country. Without children, there is no human progress. So let's say child is the alpha and omega of the life. So we value them, and as we value ourselves.
Now, following developments from the AU summit currently holding, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has told African leaders that it's time to remove Sudan from the list of state sponsors of terrorism. Addressing the annual African Union summit in Addis Ababa, Mr. Guterres said the UN would drum up international support that would enable the country to overcome its challenges. Sudan is being welcomed back into the international fold following the toppling of former President Omar al-Bashir last year. The leaders at the summit are to discuss an Africa-led peace effort to end the civil war in Libya. They will also consider how to tackle worsening militant insurgencies across Africa.